Most men believe that if they want to become unforgettable, they need to do more. More texting, more talking, more explaining, more effort, more availability. They believe that attention creates attraction, that constant presence creates value, that if they simply show people how much they care, how loyal they are, how much they have to offer, others will naturally become attached to them. But human psychology doesn't work that way. In fact, the harder most men try to become important in someone's life, the less important they become. Because people rarely become obsessed with what is constantly available. They become obsessed with what leaves an emotional imprint. They become obsessed with what they cannot fully understand. They become obsessed with what creates curiosity, anticipation, uncertainty, and emotional impact. And that is where most men fail. They spend years trying to gain attention when they should be building presence. They spend years trying to be liked when they should be building value. They spend years trying to be chosen when they should be becoming unforgettable. If you've ever felt ignored, overlooked, underestimated, manipulated, or easily replaced, this video is for you. Because today, you're going to learn a different game. But before we continue, let me ask you something. Have you ever noticed how the harder you try to keep someone's attention, the faster they pull away? The more you explain yourself, the less they respect you. The more available you become, the less valuable you seem. Most men think they're failing because they don't know the right words. They're wrong. They're failing because they're trapped in a psychological pattern that destroys attraction, respect, and personal power. That's exactly why I created the Dark Mind Protocol. Not as another motivational book, but as a complete framework for breaking free from validation, emotional dependence, and invisible psychological weaknesses. If you've ever felt ignored, overlooked, or taken for granted, you'll understand why this matters. For now, let's continue. A game most people never understand. A game hidden beneath the surface of everyday interactions. A game that determines who gets remembered and who gets forgotten. Welcome to Dark Mind Protocol. I am the Silent Strategist, and today, you will learn how to make your presence linger in someone's mind long after you've left the room. The first principle is simple. Most people focus on physical presence. Powerful people focus on mental presence. Think about the people you've never forgotten. Maybe someone from years ago. Maybe someone you barely knew. Maybe someone who entered your life briefly and disappeared. Why do you still remember them? It isn't because they spent every second around you. It isn't because they constantly demanded your attention. It's because they occupied space inside your mind. And mental space is infinitely more powerful than physical space. A person can sit next to you every day and still be forgotten. Another person can disappear for years and remain unforgettable. The difference is psychological impact. Most men enter conversations trying to impress, trying to prove themselves, trying to show how smart they are, trying to show how successful they are, trying to show how interesting they are. And in doing so, they become predictable. Predictability creates comfort, but mystery creates attention, and attention creates mental occupation. Machiavelli understood something most people never will. The human mind is naturally drawn toward unfinished patterns, toward unanswered questions, toward uncertainty. When everything is revealed, curiosity dies. When everything is explained, imagination stops working. When everything is known, attention moves elsewhere. This is why some people can talk for hours and leave no impact, while others speak very little and remain impossible to forget. Because every interaction leaves either closure or curiosity. Most men rush to create closure. The powerful learn to create curiosity. They don't reveal every opinion. They don't explain every decision. They don't expose every thought. Not because they are playing games, but because they understand human nature. The moment people feel they have fully figured you out, they stop paying attention. The moment people realize there is more beneath the surface, they begin wondering. And wondering is the beginning of obsession. Think about how often people destroy their own value by over-explaining. Someone questions them. They explain. Someone doubts them. They explain more. Someone misunderstands them. They write paragraphs trying to justify themselves, without realizing that every explanation lowers their perceived value. Powerful people don't rush to remove uncertainty. They let their actions speak. They let time reveal the truth. And because they remain calm, others become curious. Curiosity creates mental space. Mental space creates attention. Attention creates emotional investment. And emotional investment is what makes people remember you. The second principle is becoming difficult to categorize. Human beings love labels. The mind seeks shortcuts. It wants simple answers. This person is confident. This person is weak. This person is funny. This person is predictable. This person is boring. The brain constantly categorizes people because categorization conserves energy. The problem is that once people categorize you, they stop observing you. They think they already know you. And when people stop observing you, your influence begins to fade. Most men accidentally make themselves easy to categorize. They show all their cards immediately. They reveal their entire personality within days. They become completely predictable. And predictability kills intrigue. The men who leave the strongest impressions often possess layers. Not fake layers, real complexity. They can be calm and dangerous, confident and humble, disciplined and relaxed, friendly and mysterious. They cannot be summarized in a single sentence. And because they cannot be easily understood, people continue thinking about them. The mind keeps searching for answers, trying to solve the puzzle, trying to understand what remains hidden. The more difficult you are to define, the more difficult you are to forget. This doesn't mean becoming secretive. It means becoming multidimensional. Most people reveal only one side of themselves. The strongest men continue evolving. Every conversation reveals something unexpected. Every interaction breaks assumptions. And when assumptions break, attention increases. Have you ever noticed how some people seem to dominate a room without speaking much? It isn't always because they're attractive. It isn't always because they're rich. It isn't always because they're famous. It's because their presence creates questions. And questions are more powerful than answers. Before we continue, understand something important. None of this is about manipulation. Manipulation is weak. Manipulation depends on controlling others. What we're discussing is self-mastery, the development of a presence that naturally attracts attention because it is rooted in genuine strength. If you're serious about becoming impossible to manipulate, ignore, or replace, stay until the end. Because the final principle is the one that changes everything. The third principle is controlled absence. At this point, some of you are starting to realize something uncomfortable. The problem was never that people didn't value you. The problem was that you were teaching them not to, by being constantly available, by seeking approval, by making someone else the center of your emotional world. Most men never recover from this pattern. They spend years chasing attention, relationships, and validation without understanding why nothing changes. The Dark Mind Protocol was designed to break that cycle. Inside it, I go much deeper into emotional independence, psychological strength, and the hidden behaviors that silently destroy respect. You'll find it in the description if you're ready for that next step. Now let's continue. This is where most people completely misunderstand human nature. They believe value comes from constant availability. The truth is often the opposite. Imagine your favorite song playing every minute of every day. Eventually, you stop hearing it. Not because the song changed, because overexposure destroyed its impact. Human attention operates the same way. What is constantly available becomes invisible. What is scarce becomes valuable. Most men make themselves available at all times. Instant replies, constant attention, unlimited access, no boundaries, no mystery, no scarcity, and then they wonder why people lose interest. Machiavelli observed that familiarity often reduces perceived value, not because people are cruel, but because the human mind adapts quickly. What becomes normal loses emotional intensity. This doesn't mean disappearing for the sake of playing games. It means building a life so meaningful that your attention becomes valuable. You are not unavailable because you're trying to create attraction. You are unavailable because your mission matters. Your goals matter. Your growth matters. Your purpose matters. And when people sense that your life doesn't revolve around them, something interesting happens. They begin paying closer attention, because attention naturally moves toward value. A man with no mission becomes dependent. A man with purpose becomes magnetic. One seeks validation, the other creates respect, and respect always outlasts attraction. Think about the men people admire, the men who leave lasting impressions. They are rarely the ones chasing everyone else's approval. They're usually pursuing something greater than themselves, something meaningful, something difficult, something that demands their energy. And because their focus is directed toward their mission, others become drawn toward them. Not because they seek attention, because they don't need it. That distinction changes everything. Neediness repels. Purpose attracts. Desperation repels. Direction attracts. Dependence repels. Strength attracts. And people can feel the difference instantly. The irony is that the less obsessed you become with being remembered, the more memorable you become. Because true presence comes from internal strength, not external validation, not approval, not attention, not recognition, internal strength. And that is where real power begins. The fourth principle is emotional contrast. Most people are emotionally flat. Every interaction feels the same. Every conversation follows the same pattern. Every response is predictable. And because the experience is predictable, the memory quickly fades. Human beings remember contrast. They remember moments that break patterns. They remember experiences that trigger emotion. They remember people who make them feel something different. This is why some conversations stay with you for years while others disappear before the day ends. It isn't always what was said. It's how it made you feel. Machiavelli understood that influence is not merely about information. It is about emotional impact. Most men believe attraction comes from impressing others, but attraction often comes from emotional engagement. A person may forget your words. They may forget specific details, but they rarely forget how you made them feel. The problem is that many men become emotionally predictable. They react exactly as expected. When criticized, they become defensive. When ignored, they become needy. When challenged, they become emotional. When rejected, they become desperate. Their reactions are obvious, and obvious behavior is forgettable. Powerful men create emotional contrast because they control themselves. When others expect anger, they remain calm. When others expect desperation, they remain composed. When others expect explanations, they remain silent. And that unexpected response creates psychological impact. The human brain notices what breaks patterns. Imagine two men receiving criticism. The first immediately defends himself. He argues, explains, attempts to justify every action. The second listens quietly, smiles slightly, and moves on. Which man occupies more mental space? The second, because his response creates uncertainty. People begin asking questions. Why wasn't he affected? Why didn't he react? What does he know that I don't? Again, curiosity enters the equation. And curiosity is one of the strongest psychological forces in existence. Most people cannot tolerate uncertainty. They need immediate answers, immediate validation, immediate reactions. The moment you stop giving people predictable emotional responses, you become significantly more difficult to understand. And difficult to understand, people remain in the mind much longer. This does not mean becoming cold. Many people misunderstand emotional control. They think it means suppressing emotions. It doesn't. It means governing them, using them intentionally, choosing your response instead of surrendering to your impulses. A man who controls himself immediately stands apart from the majority, because most people spend their lives reacting. Few spend their lives choosing. The moment you learn to choose your reactions, your presence changes. People begin sensing something different, something solid, something stable, something powerful. And stability is rare in a world addicted to emotional chaos. The fifth principle is mastering strategic silence. Most men talk too much, not because they are confident, because they are uncomfortable with silence. Silence exposes insecurity. Silence forces people to sit with their own thoughts. Silence removes distractions, and that makes many people nervous. Watch what happens in most conversations. The moment silence appears, someone rushes to fill it. Someone starts explaining. Someone starts talking. Someone starts seeking approval. Because silence feels uncomfortable. But powerful men understand something most people never realize. Silence is not empty. Silence communicates. In fact, silence often communicates more than words. A man who constantly speaks reveals everything. His intentions, his fears, his insecurities, his emotional state. But a man who understands silence creates space. Space for observation. Space for curiosity. Space for influence. Machiavelli often emphasized the value of restraint. Not because words are useless, because words lose value when overused. Every unnecessary explanation weakens authority. Every unnecessary defense reduces power. Every unnecessary argument lowers influence. The strongest people understand when to speak. But even more importantly, they understand when not to. Think about the individuals who command respect naturally. They rarely dominate conversations. They rarely need attention. They rarely compete for validation. Instead, they observe. They listen. They gather information. And when they finally speak, people pay attention. Because scarcity increases value. This principle applies everywhere. In relationships, in friendships, in business, in leadership. The more desperately someone seeks attention, the less valuable their attention becomes. The more selective someone becomes with their words, the more weight those words carry. Silence also creates psychological tension. When people cannot easily predict your thoughts, they become more attentive. They start watching your behavior, analyzing your actions, trying to understand your intentions. Again, they begin investing mental energy. And wherever people invest mental energy, attachment grows. This is one of the reasons mysterious individuals often seem more influential than they actually are. People project their own assumptions into the silence. They create stories, interpretations, possibilities, and those possibilities occupy mental space. Most men destroy this advantage by explaining everything. They rush to remove uncertainty. They rush to prove themselves. They rush to be understood, without realizing that understanding is earned through consistency, not explanations. The sixth principle is becoming associated with elevation. This principle is rarely discussed, but it changes everything. People become attached to whatever they associate with growth. Read that again. People become attached to whatever they associate with growth. Not necessarily comfort, not necessarily pleasure. Growth. The individuals who leave lasting impressions often elevate those around them. They inspire higher standards, higher thinking, higher discipline, higher awareness. When someone consistently associates your presence with improvement, they begin valuing your presence differently. Most men attempt to gain attention through entertainment, through jokes, through approval-seeking behavior, through constant availability. But attention is temporary. Transformation is unforgettable. The people who change your life are not always the people who entertained you. They are often the people who challenged you, the people who expanded your perspective, the people who forced you to grow, the people who inspired a different version of yourself. Those individuals remain in your memory because they became linked to personal transformation. Machiavelli understood that influence grows when people perceive value, and the highest form of value is transformation. Imagine two friends. One constantly complains, gossips, wastes time, repeats the same patterns. The other encourages growth, discipline, action, responsibility. Which one creates long-term respect? The second, because human beings instinctively gravitate towards sources of advancement. Even if they resist it initially, people may enjoy comfort temporarily, but they admire strength permanently. This is why purpose matters so much. A man obsessed with growth becomes naturally attractive, not because he is trying to attract anyone, because growth generates momentum, and momentum creates energy. People feel that energy, they notice it, they respect it, and eventually they become drawn toward it. The irony is that the less focused you become on gaining attention, the more attention you receive. Because your energy shifts away from validation and toward progress. And progress is magnetic. Every man watching this should ask himself one question. When people leave my presence, do they feel heavier or lighter? Do they feel weaker or stronger? Do they feel distracted or inspired? Because the answer determines your long-term influence. People may forget what you say, but they never forget how your presence affects their trajectory. And the strongest form of influence is becoming associated with growth. Not dependence, not neediness, not validation. Growth. The seventh and final principle is the most powerful of all. And it is the principle that separates ordinary men from unforgettable men. Most people stay too long. They overextend conversations. They overstay their welcome. They continue speaking after their strongest point. They continue explaining after they have already been understood. They continue seeking attention after attention has already been earned. In doing so, they slowly reduce their impact. Because every experience has a peak, a moment of maximum emotional engagement. Most people fail to recognize it. And because they fail to recognize it, they remain too long. They dilute their own value. They transform a powerful interaction into an average one. Powerful men understand timing. They understand that leaving at the right moment creates anticipation. It preserves emotional intensity. It protects value. And most importantly, it leaves people wanting more. Most men believe that influence is created by staying longer, by talking more, by giving more, by extending every interaction as much as possible. But the psychology of human memory tells a different story. People rarely remember the longest interaction. They remember the strongest moment. And the strongest moment is often destroyed when someone refuses to let it end. Think about a great movie that continued for another hour after the story was already finished. Eventually, the impact would fade. The same principle applies to conversations, relationships, social interactions, and even personal presence. Everything we've discussed so far leads to a deeper truth. People become obsessed with your presence only after you've stopped depending on theirs. And that's where most men fail. They spend years trying to become more attractive, more interesting, more desirable, when what they actually need is to become emotionally free. Because a man who no longer needs validation becomes dangerous in a way most people don't understand. Calm, focused, independent, difficult to manipulate, impossible to control. That's the transformation the Dark Mind Protocol was built to create. Not tricks, not games. A complete shift in the way you think, act, and carry yourself. Now, let's move to the final principle. The most powerful men instinctively understand when to step back. Not because they are playing games, because they respect value. And value is preserved through timing. Machiavelli understood that power often comes from controlling access. Not controlling people, controlling access. There is a difference. The man who is available every second becomes ordinary. The man who has boundaries becomes valuable. The man who needs attention becomes predictable. The man who can walk away becomes powerful. This is why the ability to leave is one of the greatest psychological advantages a person can possess. Most people cannot leave. They stay because they fear losing approval. They stay because they fear rejection. They stay because they fear being forgotten. Ironically, that fear is exactly what makes them forgettable. Because fear destroys confidence. Fear creates neediness. Fear creates attachment to outcomes. And attachment to outcomes gives other people power over you. The strongest men develop something that Machiavelli would recognize immediately. Detachment, not indifference, not coldness. Detachment, the ability to remain committed to their values without becoming emotionally dependent on results. This changes everything, because when you no longer need a specific outcome, your behavior transforms. You stop chasing, you stop forcing, you stop manipulating, you stop performing, and you begin operating from a position of strength. People can sense this instantly, even if they cannot explain it. Human beings are incredibly sensitive to emotional energy. We notice desperation, we notice insecurity, we notice dependence, and we notice strength. The man who needs nothing from the room often becomes the most powerful person in the room. Not because he dominates, because he is free. Freedom is attractive. Freedom is respected. Freedom is remembered. Most people spend their lives trying to control others. But true power comes from controlling yourself. Because the moment you control yourself, others lose the ability to control you. Think about how many men sacrifice their dignity trying to keep someone's attention. How many send another message after being ignored? How many explain themselves to people who have already decided not to understand? How many abandon their mission because they become consumed by another person? And then they wonder why respect disappears. Respect disappears when self-respect disappears. The world notices how you treat yourself. If you constantly communicate that your time is cheap, people believe it. If you constantly communicate that your attention is unlimited, people believe it. If you constantly communicate that your emotional state depends on others, people believe it. But when you communicate through your actions that your life has purpose, standards, and direction, people begin treating you differently. Because value is not declared. Value is demonstrated. One of the biggest misconceptions about becoming unforgettable is the belief that it requires manipulation. It doesn't. Manipulation creates temporary fascination. Authenticity creates lasting impact. The problem is that most people don't know what authenticity actually means. They think authenticity means revealing everything, sharing everything, explaining everything. But authenticity is not radical transparency. Authenticity is alignment. Alignment between your words, actions, values, and behavior. When people encounter someone who is genuinely aligned, they notice. Because most individuals are fragmented. They say one thing and do another. They promise one thing and pursue another. They project confidence while feeling insecure. They seek approval while pretending not to care. This creates inconsistency. And inconsistency weakens influence. The unforgettable man is consistent. Not perfect, consistent. His actions match his principles. His behavior matches his standards. His words match reality. And over time, that consistency creates trust. Trust creates respect. Respect creates influence. And influence creates a lasting psychological footprint. Many men spend years trying to become attractive. Very few focus on becoming valuable. Attraction fluctuates. Value compounds. Attraction can be created by appearance. Value is created by character. Attraction can gain attention. Value keeps attention. Attraction may open a door. Value determines whether people remain interested. This is why purpose is so important. Purpose protects a man from becoming emotionally dependent. Purpose gives direction. Purpose creates stability. Purpose creates identity. Without purpose, people often seek meaning through relationships, through attention, through validation, through approval. And when those things disappear, they feel lost. But the man with purpose remains grounded. His identity does not collapse when circumstances change. His confidence does not disappear when someone leaves. His direction does not depend on another person's choices. And because he remains stable, he becomes rare. Rarity creates value. Most people are emotionally reactive. Most people are controlled by external circumstances. Most people surrender their peace to the opinions of others. The man who remains grounded becomes unforgettable because he represents something uncommon. Inner strength. Think about the comments you've seen beneath videos like this. Thousands of people repeating the same realization. The more they chased, the less they received. The more they needed validation, the weaker they felt. The more they depended on others for their self-worth, the more power they gave away. And the moment they shifted their focus inward, everything changed. Not instantly, but gradually. They became calmer, more disciplined, more focused, less reactive. And, strangely, the less they chased attention, the more attention arrived. Not because they were trying to attract people, because they were becoming someone worth noticing. This is one of the deepest truths about human psychology. People are drawn toward those who are moving somewhere. Not because movement itself is attractive, because movement signals purpose, direction, growth, potential. A man who is building something becomes naturally compelling. A man who is chasing everyone else's approval becomes naturally forgettable. So, if you truly want people to remember you, stop trying to be remembered. Focus instead on becoming the kind of man who leaves an impact. Focus on your discipline. Focus on your mission. Focus on your emotional control. Focus on your standards. Focus on your growth. Because obsession is often misunderstood. Most people think obsession is created through attention, but attention is only the surface. Beneath attention lies admiration. Beneath admiration lies respect. And beneath respect lies value. Value is what creates lasting influence. Not tricks, not games, not manipulation. Value. A man who respects himself naturally attracts respect. A man who controls himself naturally gains influence. A man who pursues purpose naturally becomes memorable. And a man who no longer needs constant validation becomes difficult to replace. That is the paradox. The more desperately you want to become unforgettable, the more likely you are to become forgettable. The more comfortable you become with yourself, the more powerful your presence becomes. The more focused you become on your mission, the less dependent you become on attention. And the less dependent you become on attention, the more attention you often receive. Because confidence is not loud. Confidence is not arrogance. Confidence is not domination. Confidence is certainty. The certainty that your value does not depend on another person's approval. The certainty that your direction does not depend on another person's choices. The certainty that your peace does not depend on external validation. That certainty changes how you walk, how you speak, how you respond, how you live. And people notice, not consciously, but instinctively, because genuine confidence cannot be faked. It emerges from self-respect. It emerges from discipline. It emerges from purpose. And purpose is ultimately the foundation of everything we've discussed today. The men who remain unforgettable are not usually the loudest. They're not always the richest. They are not always the most attractive. But they possess something far more powerful. They possess direction. And direction creates gravity. People trust direction. People respect direction. People follow direction. People remember direction. The world is filled with distracted men, confused men, reactive men, men who change their identity depending on who is watching. But the man who knows who he is becomes impossible to manipulate, impossible to control, and incredibly difficult to forget. So remember this. Do not try to occupy every moment of someone's attention. Occupy a meaningful place in their memory. Do not chase approval. Build value. Do not reveal everything. Maintain depth. Do not fear silence. Use it. Do not become dependent on outcomes. Remain detached. Do not seek validation. Seek growth. And above all, do not make another person the center of your world. Build a life so meaningful that your presence becomes a gift rather than a necessity. Because the people who leave the deepest impressions are not those who demand attention. They are those who create impact. And impact lingers long after presence disappears. If this video changed the way you think, subscribe to Dark Mind Protocol. Because here, we don't chase attention. We build influence. We don't seek approval. We build power. And we become impossible to manipulate, ignore, or replace. I am the Silent Strategist, and I'll see you in the next lesson. And this is the paradox most people never understand. The moment you stop chasing attention is the moment attention starts chasing you. The moment you stop needing approval is the moment people begin respecting you. The moment you stop making others the center of your world is the moment your value finally becomes visible. Most men will hear this and do nothing. They'll continue repeating the same patterns, the same mistakes, the same emotional dependence, the same endless search for validation. But a small percentage will decide to change. If you're ready to become emotionally stronger, psychologically aware, and impossible to manipulate, I've created something specifically for you. It's called the Dark Mind Protocol. Inside, you'll discover the complete framework for emotional control, confidence, respect, psychological awareness, and personal power. And today, you'll also receive every bonus designed to accelerate that transformation. The link is in the description. Build your value. Build your discipline, build your standards, and become impossible to manipulate, ignore, or replace. I'll see you in the next video.